So today's discussion will be all about volume. Yesterday we talked about finding the surface area for pyramids and cones. And we were interested in the slant height, the area of the base, and the perimeter of the base, if you remember. And then we took those measures and we divided them by 2 for our pyramid. Today we're going to look at volume, and we're going to use a different process and a different formula altogether. Remember, the volume is the measure of the space inside. So we still see that uppercase B, which if you remember is our measure, our symbol for our area for our base. So we find that by multiplying the length times the width, and luckily for us, because these are square pyramids, those measures are going to be the same. And then H will represent your height. So what you will do is you'll take the measure of the length and the width, multiply them together, multiply that product by the height, and we'll talk about the height versus the slant height. Notice it's an H and not that cursive L. Lastly, we'll take that product and divide it by 3. So here is our first square pyramid. And if you'll notice, it has both a slant height and a height. Remember, we talked about for volume, since we're measuring the space inside, we are just interested in the height, not the slant height this time. So we want, I'm going to pull this down for you. We want this measure, we want this measure here, the straight up and down height. We want to measure the space inside, and the height is going to allow us to do that. It's always going to form a perpendicular relationship to the base. So if you're using a highlighter, we would highlight the height. I'm going to try to highlight the base or the outside of the base as best I can. There we are. So we're going to multiply 73 times 73 to give us the area of the base, the uppercase B. Multiply that product by 39 centimeters, and then take the total product and divide it by 3. So here's that math. 73 times 73, that's the area of the base, the capital B in our formula. You could just take 73, and square it. And then you're going to multiply that product by the height, which is 39. When you do that, you should have gotten 207,831. Take that product and divide it by 3, because we need to take 1/3 of that product. When you do that, you should have gotten an answer of 69,277 centimeters cubed. And that's all there is to finding the volume. Let's look at another example. So here we have our square pyramid, and remember, this time we're looking for the height, or we need the height that's just straight up and down, not like yesterday when we wanted the outside. Now we want to measure the inside, so we're going to use 13.6. And then remember, for our formula, it's the area of the base. I'm going to outline that for you, times the height. So for our formula, that's going to be 1/3 times, let me click it, there we go, or 1/3 of the area of the base, 16 9/10, times 16 9/10, times the height, which will be 13 6/10. We will take that product and we're going to divide it by 3. Let me give you this will show up quite a bit better. So 16 9/10 squared, or multiplied by itself, times 13 6/10 should have given you 3,884 3/10. Take that product, divide it by 3, which will give you a volume of 1,294 77 meters cubed. We'll look at 2 more examples. So here we have a square pyramid, and if you'll remember, we are interested in the height. That's 7.5 centimeters. We're not concerned with the slant height, which is 8 centimeters this time. We'll multiply that height times the area of the base, which will be found by multiplying 7 times 7. Then we'll take a third of that. So that's 7 times 7, or 49, times 7.5. 367 and 5/10. Take that product, divide it by 3. We have a total volume of 122 and 5/10 centimeters cubed. And our last example, for our last square pyramid we're going to look at in our notes, has a height. Remember, we want the height, not the slant height. It's 10 meters. Go ahead and outline. If you have a highlighter, highlight the square at the bottom. Has a length and a width of 9 meters. So when we plug this information into our formula, it's going to be 9 times 9, or 9 squared, times our height, which was 10. We're going to ultimately take that product, divide it by 3. 9 times 9 is 81, times 10 is 810. Divide it by 3, 270 meters cubed. And that is how you find the volume for a square pyramid. Okay, next we're going to talk about how you find the volume of a cone. So really, volume is all about finding the area of the base times the height. The reason we have to take that measure and divide it by 3, or take 1/3 of it, is because a cone has a volume that is 1/3 of a cylinder with its same base and height. So that is why we have to take these measures and divide them by 3. So you'll find that we need similar information for our volume as to what we needed for our cylinder. And we find that we still need pi. We're still going to need the radius, and we're still going, well, in this case, we're going to use the height, not the slant height. Again, if you'll notice that we have the H for height, not that cursive L, which is what we used for our slant height. So we want that straight up and down height. And remember, for pi, we typically use 3.14. They're going to give you the radius or the diameter, in which case you'd have to divide it by 2 to find the radius. And then they will also provide that height for you. So here we have our first cone that we're going to look at. Notice they did try to throw you off by giving you the slant height. We don't need it. We want that straight up and down perpendicular height. So 8 centimeters, that's the side that forms that right angle perpendicular relationship with our radius, which is 5. So we'll plug those values into our formula. Remember, pi usually, I've rarely seen it used as anything other than 3.14. 5 was our radius, and we're going to square it. By the way, pi r squared sounds like area to me, so really we're just finding the area for the circle. Taking that area, multiplying it by the height, straight up and down perpendicular height of the cone, and then lastly taking that product and dividing it by 3. So 3.14 times 5 squared, which is 25, times 8 gives you 628. And when you take 1/3 of 628, you get a volume of 209 and 33 centimeters cubed. Let's look at another example. So again, they've given you that slant height to try to throw you off, but you're not going to fall for that. We're going to find our volume by taking that real up and down perpendicular 90-degree height, as we want the inside height to find the measure of the inside, and then they were nice enough to give you the radius for this one as well. Those are the two measures that we need. So we're going to plug these values into our formula. I tried to hide some things for you so we can do this together. 3.1 or 1/3 is going to come in at the end when we divide them by 3. Pi is 3.14. Our radius was 4. Remember, you're going to square it. And then the height they gave us, it was 7. So please grab a calculator. We're going to multiply our products, 3.14 times 4 squared times 7. You should have gotten a product of 351 and 68/100. We'll take that and divide it by 3. And you get a total volume of 117 and 23/100 cubic feet. All right, here's another example. Again, I'm going to throw you off, but you're not falling for that. You know we need that straight up and down height because we're measuring the space of the inside. So we want to know how tall the inside is, not how tall the outside is. That's surface area. That was yesterday. And they've given you the radius. The radius is 3. Remember, the radius goes from the center to the outside. Plug those values in. 1/3, that's going to come in at the end when we divide it by 3. We don't have to do it at the end. It's just so much easier on the calculator when you divide it by 3 at the end. Pi is 3.14. Our radius is 3. Just as a reminder, you are going to need to square that. And the height they gave us was 5 6/10. So when you multiply 3 and 14/100 times 3 squared, or 9, times 5.6, you get 158 and 26/100. Take that product, divide it by 3. You should have gotten a total volume of 52 and 75/100 meters cubed. And here's our last example. Again, I know I've said this every time, but don't be thrown off by this 6 feet. You don't need that. That's how tall the outside is. We don't want to know how tall the inside is for volume. And then we're nice enough to give you the radius. By the way, we haven't looked at an example where they gave you the diameter, but let's just pretend they told you the diameter was 4 feet. You'd have to cut it in half to get the radius, which is what you need. Plug these into our handy dandy formula. So we're going to take that 1/3. It's just easier when you do that division at the end. Pi is usually going to be 3.14. Our radius that they gave us was 2. Don't forget to square it. And our height, 3.9, excuse me. When you put those in your calculator, you should get 48 and 98/100. We'll take that product and divide it by 3. And our volume, ta-da, 16 and 33/100 feet cubed. And that is how you find volume for a cone and volume for a pyramid. Please follow directions and do the practice provided by your teacher.